Garcia. He's a climate change adaptation specialist. Nippon Koei Company Limited, Japan. He is now incorporating climate projection into adaptation and risk assessment for the Nippon Koei engineering project, covering water resources management, environmental impact assessment, disaster preparedness, and sustainable development. Mr. Irangsingh Sanjeewa, he is a Deputy Director of Water Resources Planning at the Mahabeli Authority of Sri Lanka. This is a multidisciplinary governmental organization, and he is now studying at the ICHAM. And investigating the methodologies for incorporating the climate projection output into decision-making processes for transboundary water sharing. So I'm sorry, I'm Toshio Koike, Executive Director of ICHAM, and I'm moderating this session. So firstly, I would like to invite the Professor Kantosh for his presentation. The floor is yours. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much, Koike-sensei, for your introduction. Flash floods are a global concern and are significantly affecting our cities in Asia, in Africa, in different parts of the world. But surprisingly, in the arid environment, Wadi flash flood are significantly affecting or damage the cities and frequently happening as well. That evidenced by or proved as happened in Oman, in Jordan. I'm not sure, can I? As happened in Oman, in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the dam failures in Libya last year, and the incident of inundation of Dubai airport this year. At Kyoto University, we established a network for Wadi Flash Flood Network, where institutions within these almost 8 countries in the Middle East, North Africa, with different institutions in Japan and including Vietnam and the Philippines in Asia, to support disaster risk reduction and water harvesting over the MENA region. So the extreme flash flood occurred frequently in the MENA region and left large number of loss and economic damage, especially in the coastal wadi. What is the coastal wadi? So it's a kind of system that connects between mountains to the sea, and where this rainfall generate erosion of muds and sediment transported to the downstream, and most of governor or local government try to manage by constructing a retention dam, recharge dams, and this a kind of driving factors of climate change and urban expansion and water harvesting for this effort. Here, the climate or extreme climate pattern are very much changing. Too less water in a very prolonged time, and too much water suddenly in a short time. How to manage their system. In Algerian government, they decided to make intra-basin water transfer, constructing several dams and transferring the water, but that generated lots of challenge for artificial flood in the urban area due to the risk communication between different stakeholders. The natural climate or climate variability and also human impacts because of the design of the dams cause or lead for the main cause for the dam failure, 2 dam failures in Bou Mansour Dam and the Balad Dam in Wadi Durna in flood last year, where the last dam is very little 100 meters far from the urbanized area. We conducted a post-flood survey where we found more than 12-meter flood has been reached. Here's the pictures of the flood dam, the failure of the 2 dams, and we can see the second dam has completely flushed away and caused more than 5,000 loss of life, 10,000 missing, and more injured. Here you can see the building almost washed away before and after the flood, which was really very big disaster, second dam failure. So we examined the climate change impact, especially and temporally, current and future, and we found that over the region there are big difference. Some areas will receive a very extensive high rainfall with more than 10 times higher, and some other areas are a little bit less ratio. However, this brought us for that we must update the intensity duration duration frequency curve, IDF curves, for existing and future infrastructure that will be constructed in the future. Additional effort, we try to upgrade or propose upgrading for the early warning system, including more accurate rainfall prediction utilizing weather radar or other high technological monitoring system. So we tried to install a real-time monitoring system technique. That was really very unique and the first time to be implemented in Oman, where we have utilized the geophone acoustic for measuring the triggering of the first part of the water with camera and trying to measure the water level, flow velocity, and couple with machine learning and artificial intelligence to develop and to support the early warning and also updating the incoming water to the downstream and for the dams. We try to develop a kind of approach where structural measures and the non-structural measures are implemented, but additionally also water harvesting, because most of this water in the desert. Please imagine harvesting this water are very precious to be utilized for drinking and agricultural water use at the end. Then we try to propose this integrated approach where structural measure, non-structural measure, and water harvesting approach should be combined. We found that a kind of new NGO should be formulated to establish or to make the facilitating the linkage between stakeholders and the local community and as well as science. We established the International Organization on Climate Change Adaptation and Disaster Risk Reduction Management. It's based in Philippines with many different researchers, practitioners in different parts of the world. So at the end, the WADI proposed a multidisciplinary approach where we want to include innovative approach, technological database networking, teamwork with existing global network, national network for disaster risk reduction and sediment management, water harvesting, water management to reduce the dam or improve the dam optimization operation, society and the environment, and the decision-making planning. With this, I would like to thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kantosh, the extreme introduction to extreme event related to the another extreme situation and also the solution there. Thank you very much. Facilitation, toward facilitation, you established the NGO and working together. Thank you very much. So next, this is also the sediment-related disaster issue. Dr. Chin, the floor is yours.
Okay, nice to meet you all. So I'm Monglu Chin, a research specialist in iCharm. So this is my topic today. So the background about this study is because in recent years, we saw a lot of sediment flood disaster occurred in Japan. So the situation is like during the heavy rainfall, the upstream, there are widely landslide and debris flow occurred. Then it produced a large amount of sediment. Then those sediment will be transported by the flood, then reach to the downstream, then induce the very severe flood and sediment inundation to the plain area. So in order to predict such kind of multi-hazards in a watershed, our team is trying to implement mechanic-based sediment transport series to our model, make sure that our model has a capability to predict the behavior of the sediment and flood response to the extreme rainfall. So we developed a rainfall and sediment runoff model, so-called RSR model. This model is combined basin scale sediment transport model. So you can see the capability. It can simulate the landslide, debris flow, even driftwood, and also, of course, the sediment transport through the river. We combine this model with a rainfall runoff process model. Then, based on this structure, RSR model can predict of course, the flood discharge and sediment, driftwood discharge, and also the sediment size information, distribution information at any location inside of the watershed. And even more, we can use such kind of characteristics of the RSR model, even extend our simulation to a very local scale, like 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional flow and bed variation simulation, by obtaining the upstream conditions for them from the RSR model. So based on this process, our methodology actually has a capability to deal with different types, also different scales of the flood and sediment issues in the entire catchment area. So next I will show some case study we applied our method. The first one is the flood and sediment disaster occurred in Marumori Town, 2019, Miyagi Prefecture in Japan. Like here, during the typhoon, the mountainous area widely landslide debris flow occurred. And in the downstream, there are sediments, also flood inundation to the plain area. So we try to find some observed data to validate our simulation result. But we found actually the quality of the observed data, like the identified landslide area, it's varied in the observed data. Like this one is identified from aerial photo. And this one is much better. They use the information of the elevation change before and after the disaster occurred. Then we check back our simulation result. We found actually the landslide only occurred in quite limited area. But if we also plot our debris flows simulation result, we can see it's matched with the observed data quite well. So it implies the observed data also actually include some incorrect information for the landslide. It includes a lot of debris flow tracks. So I think our model also can feedback to improve the understanding of what we are measuring. Then also we check the temporal change of the landslide occurrence, also check the prediction of the water level around the dike bridge point, and it matched quite well. Then we can say our model actually capable to simulate landslide and debris flow and flood inundation simultaneously during the flood, the rainfall processes. And the next one, we also try to check our capability of the model for the large-scale flood and sediment inundation. This case is the Agno River Basin in Philippines. The disaster occurred in 2009. It's induced by the typhoon, but the situation is before the typhoon come, those areas already experience continuous rainfall for 3 weeks. So when the typhoon come, the dams already full with the water. So they have to release the water, even the typhoon is calm, then to avoid the dam failures. Then it induced a wide sediment and flood inundation to the on the plain area. So we try to simulate the detailed flood and sediment inundation process in the plain area in that disaster. So we use our SR model to get the upstream boundary condition about the inflow of the flow and sediment discharge to the area we are going to conduct the two-dimensional analysis. So this is the boundary conditions we get from our SR model, quite detailed. Then finally, we achieved successfully predict the dike bridge point, and also we can show the very detailed behavior of the sediment movement during the flood. And more importantly, our model can actually identify there are large sediment deposits on the very wide land area. So my conclusion, our model actually is effectively to predict the flow and sediment transport behavior in response to the extreme rainfall, and also can help understanding the measurement. And but the last point I want to pose here is before we apply our model to the real flood prediction, I would like to ask the cooperation with the government, also the public authority, to build a fundamental data measurement for ensure our models in initial condition is proper. And the last message is linked to our today's topic. Our method can contribute to bridge the gap between the science community and the society on disaster risk reduction decision making and the individual action by improving the high quality and also the high resolution of the flood and sediment hazard prediction. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, your introduction to the interaction between water and sediment, and clarify the mechanism and estimate the damage due to this kind of the event. And as you mentioned, how to convey this science to the society. Next, we would like to invite the Dr. Martin Gomez. He's working to develop the interface from the climate science for the application to the society. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Professor Koike. I'm going to talk to you a more general topic about the contributions of the private sector to informed decision making in the context of climate change. I work for the Climate Change and Sustainable Development team of Nippon Koi, which is a Japanese civil engineering consultant company. We actually have a booth on the first floor. Make sure to check it out. And I collaborate and lead projects related to water resources management, climate change adaptation, and disaster risk assessment. And besides project management, the company lets me engage in other activities, which keywords are research and tool development, knowledge management, and capacity building. These other activities are aimed at contributing to informed decision making. Here we have two diagrams. One is the cycle of disaster risk management, and the other one is the initial stage of climate change adaptation, which is impact modeling. In both fields, it's very important, it's essential to know how the frequency and the intensity of extreme events, natural hazards are going to change in the future. So at Nippon Koi, I try to be the person who translates climate science and makes climate information usable and accessible to other engineers and consultants to support decision making. When conducting capacity building, one of my objectives is to expand climate literacy. And I usually try to explain basic concepts to first-time users of climate information. For example, here I have the figures that I will usually use to explain the difference between weather and climate, and also what climate models are and what information we can actually get from climate models. Having an understanding of these basic concepts gives a new perspective to end users of climate information and helps them think about how to adequately use, depending on their needs, projections of future climate. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the research I conduct at Nippon Koi. Here I have one about the quantification of uncertainty in climate models. So due to recent disclosure obligations and regulatory mandates, there has been an increase in the demand of climate risk information from the private sector. And this is a business opportunity, and it led to the emergence of the climate service providers, or CSPs. And the competition amongst CSPs led to the delivery of overly precise climate risk information, and all of this without the scrutiny of the scientific community. And actually, the CSPs overlook the limitations of climate models and climate projections, and this gives sometimes a false security to stakeholders and investors, and can lead to potentially ill-informed decisions and maladaptation. So in a recent survey of the UN Environment Program, transparency came out as the most important factor at the time of deciding a CSP, and yet CSPs fail to disclosure the uncertainty attached to future climate information. So with a colleague of the insurance sector, who I think is here today, we are trying to develop a new approach to determine the uncertainty of climate projections that is based on the consideration of how to address the nature of the different sources of uncertainty in climate models. And also I did some research about bias correction of climate models. Bias correction basically is you compare observations and simulated climate and you determine systematic biases, and you use those systematic biases to correct projections of future climate. And this is basically, essentially, a math problem. And recent approaches, they do a very good job at using computing power to solve these mathematical problems. However, they can be extremely invasive and unwillingly modify some characteristics that took a lot of effort for scientists to accomplish, like climate signal and interannual variability. And so a few years ago, with the cooperation of a colleague from the National Institute of Environment Studies of Japan, I developed a method of bias correction, which is more comprehensive and tries to preserve the climate signal and address interannual variability and other issues of previous methods. And the projects at Nippon Koei use this bias correction data, and sometimes the requests for bias corrected information were overwhelming, so the company agreed to fund the rollout and maintenance of NK ClimVault, which is a free access online portal that I developed, which is a database of projected climate trends and weather extremes, and has the objective of facilitate the rapid access to global projections of climate under different climate change scenarios. And because I'm the data collector and processor and web designer and maintainer, it takes me a little bit of time to update it, but please check it out. And also I collaborate with other projects of the company, like the so-called Water Security Compass, which is under development, and it's based on a state-of-the-art global hydrological model developed also at the National Institute for Environment Studies of Japan, and it's aimed to supporting the reporting of water-related risks and impacts to the water cycle. And this is an effort, joint effort of Nippon Koei and also Suntory Holdings, which is one of Japan's largest bottling companies, under the guidance of the University of Tokyo, and with the support of the Data Integration and Analysis System, DIAS, which is an effort that saw the light more than a decade ago, thanks to Professor Koike. Finally, I want to talk to you about a topic that I'm not an expert yet, but I'm trying to learn every day about it. It's how to communicate climate science and risks, and the importance of understanding human behavior. On the left, you have a figure that you would usually find in scientific reports of future precipitation under different climate scenarios, and maybe you can generate from this information flood levels for different scenarios, and maybe it makes sense for us, but humans have the difficulty responding rationally to risks from events that are outside their experience. And because of that, we need to think about other approaches of how we communicate risk and raise the related awareness. There are two examples of how risk is communicated based on past local experiences. And I have some final remarks, but I will save them for later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. The principle and the capacity and the tools and the system and raising awareness. It's a very important point. Thank you very much. So the last but not least, we would like to invite the Mr. Ilangasing the Sanjeevat. He's now really a final stage of the PhD program. Tomorrow, the final defense. I would like to invite him and ask him to introduce his research, but his application, the science, to the decision making.
Thank you very much, Sensei. I'm Sanjeev Langasingh from Sri Lanka. Today I'm going to talk about the holistic framework for utilization of existing water resources of interbasin system for tackle the climate change. There are numerous natural disasters in the world. Floods, earthquake, landslide, and droughts are a few prominent ones. The climate change and local weather affect all human endeavors. Society will face new challenges from 21st century climate change projections. According to the recent report, over 19% of impact were water-related in 2023. So figure 1 shows the impact of climate change, highlighting countries with the largest population exposed to the even small inundation, affecting millions. And figure 2 illustrates the global drought risk, with 1/5 of the large cities facing high or very high risk of drought. According to figure 3, the world population is increasing rapidly, adding 1 billion people every 12 years, increasing the demand for basic needs. The extreme floods are caused by climate change impact, like irregular rainfall, and water resources vary by regions. The growing population increases disaster risk by raising demand for land and necessities. The 5 global agenda, Sustainable Development Goal, Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and Kumamoto Declaration 2022, and Water Conference 2023, contribute to a holistic framework for understanding, addressing about complex challenges. My research targeted respond to this international framework to build a sustainable society by strengthening disaster resilience. It is crucial to identify the disaster risk, including their level of danger, vulnerability, capability, and exposure to the people, property, and environment. Climate services use projected future climate variables for various purposes. However, there are gaps in applying science and technology to disaster risk reduction policies. To address the above gaps, I introduced novel 5 principles using global climate model output in decision making on climate variability at first. The climate model used for the decision making should be accurately represent the current regional climate. When using GCM at regional or local scale, downscale and bias correction should be implemented. And the climate sensitivity of climate model should be identified, and the disparities in outcome among climate models should be understood. And the climate model should be able to address diverse environment. Then I introduced the novel 5 guiding principles aimed at addressing gaps in hydrogeological analysis for analyzing the influence of climate change on water availability. Utilize a reliable GCM output as an input to hydrological model and a stimulus capable hydrological model, and climate change features identification using various hydrometeorological indices and the recognized key climate change phenomena and diverse environment capability. And based on these principles, I developed framework. It includes rainfall projection, and then develop hydrological parameters and then solutions by transbasin water sharing and the conclusion. This figure shows that the climatology analysis result for the Sri Lankan context, and this is the annual case, and this is the seasonal case, and near future, middle future, and far future. Red color shows the increasing, and green color shows the decreasing. For example, the annual cases, it shows the increasing precipitation. However, in the intermonsoon 1 cases, it shows the decreasing precipitation for some basins. And finally, I aggregate the result of all climate change projection into the single decision-making matrix known as color-coding climate change matrix, which eventually assists the decision-making. And it includes the climate change data, past climate data, and the future climate projections results. For example, in the past cases, southwest monsoon, rainfall decreases. However, in the future, it shows increasing. That's been climate change signal. And this C4 climate change matrix cover relevant all important details to climate change effect on rainfall for initial decision making. I integrated all hydrometeorological indices such as SPI, SSI, and soil moisture index and standard evaporation index, and develop a holistic wet and dry condition for future projections. This projection for wet conditions show clear trend. However, the tendency vary by basin and spatially, and near future, middle future, and far future time slot. For dry condition, the summary figure shows that the many areas are uncertainties, indicating inconsistent result moving different models. Consequently, we cannot draw a definite conclusion about dry conditions as we can for wet conditions. It's clear. So these are, the results show the wet conditions are clearer than the drought conditions. So drought projection trends show uncertainty in indicates output, resulting in lack of overall clarity about drought condition. This slide shows the sensitivity for the trend of the future projection for proper maximum paddy damage area for the basins and the near future, middle future, and far future. For say, high sensitivity for paddy damage can be experienced in the future, and the flood damage on paddy will be increased. We can experience increase. So this figure shows the demand side coverages for the past and the future without diversion and with diversion cases. So, for example, the past cases without diversion, it getting worse in the future. However, with the diversion, we can tackle the future cases. It covered 100% coverages. This is a summary. Without diversion, all demand side getting worse without diversion. However, with diversion, it shows that all demand side can cover 100% coverage for Yala and March season. So, now conclusion. The GCM sensitivity vary especially and temporarily, and more flood damages on paddy in the future. And drought projection involve more uncertainty, especially in agricultural drought. And simple, detailed climate analysis chart is better communicate scientific message to the scientific community as well as the public decision makers. The socio-economic direct benefit due to the interbasin water sharing for donor basin as well as the recipient basin, and the climate change impact can be mitigated by water sharing. So this proves that the water sharing system can enhance societal robustness even under the climate change scenario. To effectively manage water resources in face of climate change, we recommend the following policies. Develop a holistic analysis system that consider water demand and available resource as interconnected, analyzing them as a whole system for sustainable management. Each basin has its own unique feature and resources, which can be utilized in conjunction with the other basins to tackle climate change without harming existing basin systems. And also establish a strength in integrated basin management authority, and also enhance climate resilient infrastructure, and also promote international collaboration, foster cooperation between countries to share knowledge, resource, and strategies for managing transboundary water resources and addressing climate change impact collectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irangasinghe, for your holistic approach, the introduction to holistic approach. So we would like to invite all speakers to the front desk, front sheet. And thank you very much for your cooperation. We have 3 or 4 minutes the question and answer. And after that, I would ask the all speakers to respond my question. Okay, so do you have any question or comment? Okay, do you have a microphone, something?
Yeah, Alex from Marsh Advisory. Thank you very much to all the presenters for very knowledgeable, for sharing your knowledge. I have one question in particular for Martin-san about climate service providers. Yeah, so as you know, this industry of climate service providers is very big. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And all around the world, stress tests, climate disclosures are relying on climate service providers. So question to you is, how do we police these climate service providers to ensure that the information is scientifically robust, and whose job is it to do that?
Hello. Okay. So thank you for such a difficult question.
I think the scientific community made a lot of effort to make this information freely available for anyone to use. So I think before the application of this data gets accepted, it should be regulated, maybe by the government, that the providers of this information disclose all the uncertainty that is related or is actually associated to climate data. There have been some ideas of how to do that proposed by the scientific community, but sadly there is so much they can do without the support from local governments. Yeah.
Okay. So I think there are two kinds. The bias which can be corrected based on our scientific understanding, but in some bias, at this moment we cannot correct. So in that case, we identify the range of the bias or quantified bias, but this cannot be corrected. But we need to share such kind of the bias with society for their decision making. I think that is one of the ideas. Do you agree? Okay. Oh, one more, please. Oh.
Hello. My name is Fanny from Dutch Research Institute Deltares, the Netherlands. And I would like to ask a similar question because you mentioned about the data sources, so it's decision making under uncertainty. But I'm wondering whether, or maybe in general in IHM, you also address under deep uncertainties, for example, human behavior on the climates, because that's very happening research in the Netherlands. I'm wondering, like, what is if you already have methodology for that? Thank you.
Anyone? Okay. What is that?
So I think one of the most widely used methodologies was one developed both in collaboration World Bank and Deltares, I think, which is decision making under deep uncertainty, the consideration of different scenarios, different solutions, and making a kind of assigning a probability to each solution. And I think it's a really good approach. It includes the solutions that can be provided by society, but also other variables like climate and economical factors. However, I've seen that lately there has been an emergence, a bottom-up approach that it's very interesting, that relies on the experience of local people. And the scenarios are built to based on their experiences, and because they are based and the scenarios are built on their experiences, they are more likely to not only react but decide how their resources are going to be used to either reduce their exposure or vulnerability to these hazards.
How about Professor Kantosh? Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the most of available provided data or global climate data are very useful, but sometimes we are also in need for some stational or gauging information. And only relying on the available satellite data is very good because we have some ungauged basin or ungauged area. However, only this is not sufficient. Please try to rely and combine. Sometimes bias correction is good, but should be watched which area, is it mountainous area or more flat areas. This is very much different in the basin scale.
Okay. My second major is psychology, so I want to discuss with you deeply. Okay, but I would ask the two questions. You know the Professor Kantosh, they get a bachelor in Egypt and a master in Japan and a PhD in Switzerland. And Dr. Chin get a bachelor, master, PhD in Japan, and Dr. Martin they get a bachelor in Bolivia and master and PhD in Japan. And the Mr. Srilang, the Ilanga Singh, the bachelor master in Sri Lanka and master in Netherlands, and he's now going to get a PhD in Japan. And they are now working all over the world, of course, in Japan and all over the world. So my question is, first question is, what do you think is the most important lesson you have learned from Japan regarding the disaster risk reduction? Professor Kantosh?
Thank you very much. I think Japan has several unique things. First, proactive approach. Proactive approach for planning, education, local residents, and also a kind of very accurate early warning system, very on time, and it depends on the multi-hazard issue. And important part also is, I am expert for dam engineering, river engineering, the upgrading approach, which has been taken as a fighting climate variability and extremes, are really very unique in Japan, and it's one of the leading countries for drilling the existing infrastructure, adding new bottom outlet, adding spillway, and upgrading the operation rule of the dams and the infrastructures, which is very unique. But I think there are still things to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Chen, the same question.
Okay, so actually, I have a very long time experience living in Japan. Also, my academic background from the college is from totally in Japan. Actually, I think the most important lesson I learned from the Japan risk reduction is compared to the very advanced technology or the knowledge about for the disaster, I would give the credit for the ordinary preparation and also the emergency drill practice. Even in school, also in the company, even in the community, they do redo the same practice every year, multiple times in the same time. It's why it's important for me. I feel it's, I don't think it will educate people become very expert as a disaster evacuation expert. But in a really emergency situation, compared to you totally have no knowledge about where you need to evacuate and what you need to do, but through the ordinary practice, we somehow know what should we do. And I really also did the same things when I was in Japan, just arrived in Japan the first year, the very big earthquake, 2011, occurred in Japan. And also back to China, I also experienced the biggest earthquake in China. But in China, in that time, I totally panicked and I don't know what to do. And all the people in our society don't know what to do, the whole city, for a few days. So I think that's the most important lesson I learned from Japan.
Thank you very much. Dr. Martin.
Okay. So to build a society that is resilient to natural disasters, I think Japan's approach integrates very well application, implementation of technology, comprehensive education, and involvement of communities. And much has been talked about the technology of Japan, but I think it's worth highlighting how important are the nationwide drills and public awareness campaigns that are made here in Japan. Children know very well how to react in case of earthquakes, fires, and floods because of the drills they carry out at schools every year. And also, I think there is a fostering of a culture of continuous learning and adaptation. And I think this highlights the fact that it's more important to be prepared than to only focus on post-recovery, post-disaster recovery.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ilangashingo, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Sensei. I have been living in Japan for 3 years now, and one thing I have learned from Japan is their exceptional preparedness for disaster or anything. The nation educates its citizens about preparedness from childhood to through the old age. I believe this continuous education and regular updates on preparedness are the best way to tackle any kind of disaster. So Japanese, I saw that the parents give the basic training for their kids, and also the head of the department also give their servants for their basic preparedness for any disaster, as Dr. Shin told. In Sri Lankan case, actually, we didn't have such a preparedness. I remember that 2004, when tsunami hit our country, 2004, by that time we didn't know the meaning of the tsunami. And because of unawareness and also the unpreparedness, it lost more than 30,000 lives. So I think in Japan, there are exceptional preparedness for any type of thing, and especially for disaster.
Okay, thank you. Oh, let me summarize. Okay, I think there's several keywords: the wide, long, continuous, from ordinary to emergency, and updating. Such kind of the attitude may be one of the aspects of the Japan. Okay, thank you very much. The next, please suggest issues that Japan should address now or in the future to reduce the disaster risk. But the time is now running. One word, one word, one phrase, okay? Please try.
Thank you. I think a community-based management strategy is missing in Japan. Severe drought planning, severe heat waves, and nature-based solution to be included more for flood management, giving more space in the river for flood reduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Chin?
Okay, so I just want to, based on my experience, I think the cooperation, even among the engineers in Japan, like for my field, the sediment disaster, river engineers and sabo engineers, they are not collaborate in Japan. They need collaborate. Yeah, that's a big
Thank
issue.
you very much. This is a really weak point of Japan. Okay, next, please.
Okay, so after a disaster, the ones that have to react and be prepared are people. So I think the words I will offer will be mental health and well-being.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Ilangashinga, please.
I have noticed some infrastructure. Japan has so many infrastructure. I saw some infrastructures are getting old. getting age. So I suggest to check those infrastructure strength, because usually those exposed to the earthquakes and flood and heat waves, so getting deteriorated continuously. So need to check those all the structures.
Okay, thank you very much. They identified the keywords, so I don't need to summarize. I myself, I fully understood those points. Thank you very much. So let me summarize this session. In this session, the climate change, the information can be used as input into hydrological model, including the sediment and various components, and that should be connected to the social component, the environment, the socioeconomic and even cultural history, and then based on the holistic impact assessment, the adaptation measure can be considered and decision will be made and implementation. And as all of the presenter mentioned, and also as we discussed, the uncertainty for the decision making, that is very important. So in this case, from the end, the cutting edge science and local action should be connected. So end-to-end approach is necessary. To realize this one, as Professor Kanto should mention, facilitation, and also the Dr. Martin Gomez Garcia introduced the capacity building. So how to build the capacity of the community and the society. So that the facilitation may be necessary, and then the integrated knowledge, from the mountain collapse to the basin-wide transport, and then accumulation, and then the flood occurs. So, and also such information to the social component. So the knowledge integration is also important, and then integrated knowledge can be shared through the function of the facilitation. Then we will be able to fill the gap between science and the society. So keyword, end-to-end approach, facilitator, you all, and knowledge integration. So this is our conclusion. Thank you very much for your attention.